Hey, what's good, you guys? It's John Manalo. I got a pair of 1999 white cement 4s. These were previously worked on. The guy didn't like how they turned out, so he took the soles apart. I was already in the process of working on the shoes. That's why you see that blue ink line. At first, I wasn't going to record the process, but then I was like, I might as well. So the issue with this pair is that the cracking door buck sits higher than the midsole line. So I had to shave down the midsole a little bit just so it'll be less noticeable. Before I started to work on the shoes, if I were to lay the midsole underneath the upper, you could still see the frayed door buck material on top of the midsole, if that makes sense. So I laid down the midsole as flush as I could after shaving down the midsole with the Dremel tool. Then I use an invisible ink that will disappear with heat. And then I'm just tracing it with the tape just so I can prep the leather even further. I'm going to be using cotton balls and acetone to remove any of the factory glue still left on there or the excess glue that the previous restore did. Now the invisible ink that I applied will give me a good idea of where the midsole will sit after I applied the glue. I had to be very careful with this process because the upper material, this door buck leather, is very brittle now. Like, it's so brittle that any contact with a solvent like acetone, it'll disintegrate the material. Now using a Dremel tool, I'm going to remove some of the excess super glue that this other person used. You could use super glue, but it really depends on the material that you're using it on. Now I want to carefully peel off the tape because I don't want the leather to peel off with the tape. And if you notice, a little bit of that leather did peel off with the tape, which is fine. Now I'm just testing to see if everything lines up perfectly. I am going to paint the midsoles first before attaching the uppers because I don't want to reapply the tape on the uppers to stress out the material even more. I am going to be using an airbrush to paint the midsole, so I'm just taping up the sidewalls where the glue will be applied on the midsole, just so there won't be any issues when it's time to reglue the shoes. I am going to go over the midsole with acetone and cotton balls just to make sure I have a clean surface to paint on. I'm going to apply Bulldog adhesion promoter just so our paint will stick better to the midsole. One thing I like to do before airbrushing is I like to strain the paint just so I don't get any clumps that might clog the air gun. I'm using an off shade of white that's more of an eggshell white, so it's not that pure white straight from the bottle. I'm going to lay down a few light coats at first, then I'm going to go heavy after the third or fourth coat. After the white paint has been set, I'm going to apply a new layer of tape so then I can add my gray color. I'm going to repeat the same process as before. I'm going to go light on the first few coats, then go heavy on a third or fourth coat. Now this gray color is a custom mix that I've done. I have to make a new batch for every single white cement 4 that I do because not all pairs will oxidize the same way. Now I'm going to use my grandma's toothbrush for the splatter effect since she doesn't have teeth anymore, so she doesn't need this toothbrush. It's actually been a long time since I've done this, so I'm a little rusty on my splatter effect. Alright guys, now for the moment of truth, I'm gonna peel off the paint and see if I need to do any touch-ups. I'm going to apply this Angelus varnish that will help protect it from scratches, and I'm going to be applying it with an airbrush. Alright guys, now it's time for the hard part. Now for this next step, I'm going to apply a thin layer of glue on the midsole first. Now to make sure that the shoes will bond properly, I'm going to prep the midsole using cotton balls and acetone, and being careful not to touch the freshly painted sides. Now I don't want to use tape on the upper to do my reglue process like I usually do, because I don't want the leather to peel from being so brittle. So I'm just gonna apply glue directly on the exposed fabric and using something hard like the back end of my glue stick to really pat down the glue. Now carefully, we're going to attach the upper back to the midsole. Now that the shoes have been glued, the last step will be to restitch the toe cap using a sewing awl. Now to recondition the synthetic leather, I'm going to apply mink oil, which will lightly help with the flexibility of the material. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick video, and if you guys can do me a really big favor and like the video, that'll mean a lot to me. Alright, I appreciate you, and I'll see you guys in the next video.